Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we're gonna return to memories of the Circle G in just a moment.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit, burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls. Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday, crowd went wild. He cracked a joke and sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Deep, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Black in hair, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight, then back behind the velvet door. He gave away a little more. Music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held his sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. He didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mirth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. Gave away his heart, not just a soul. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, hid the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. Gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.
Welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, and today we're gonna go back into the Circle G with more memories, and we're gonna try to finish off the stories that we started yesterday. All about the time that Elvis spent riding on the ranch on a horse, just like we can see him in this picture, which was taken at the Circle G. Hi, Terry. Hi, Marion. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And thank you for the compliment about the song, Marion. I appreciate that too. That's another song that I had created from lyrics that I wrote from one of my earlier videos about Elvis. In this case, the one where he gave away a lot of money to the American Heart Association during his very last concert in Las Vegas, 1976. But if you were here yesterday for the last episode, you know that we're talking about the Circle G Ranch. And we saw that Elvis bought the Circle G and spent a lot of money for it, multiple millions of dollars in today's money, and then spent nearly another $1 million in today's money on pickup trucks and other things that he bought so they could have fun on the ranch. Thank you for the compliment about the song, Terry. I appreciate that. And we'd gotten to a point where Elvis had moved into the ranch, so to speak. He'd spent a few nights there. They had some of the horses there. He finalized the purchase. He kept the former employee that was running the ranch employed. So he kept that continuity on the ranch. Had some of the cattle that was originally there, 18 head. And if you want to know more about those details, and you didn't see the last episode, I highly encourage you to watch that one as well. But what we know is that Elvis put in charge of the ranch his friend Alan Fortas, who we met yesterday, and who'd been with Elvis long enough to remember Gladys. He'd spent a lot of time drinking coffee and talking to Gladys. And he'd been with Elvis on the road quite a bit. In fact, a lot of times when you saw Elvis in casual clothing during the 1960s, prior to the ranch, that clothing had been picked by Alan Fortas, he knew what Elvis's style was, what he liked to wear. He'd find that wear in different places, and when he found a shirt that he knew Elvis would love, he'd get 5 of them, or 10 of them, or 20. Whatever it is he thought would satisfy Elvis for that particular item. Got a pair of pants he liked, might have bought 10 or 12 pair at a time. So he did a lot of clothing buying, purchasing for Elvis during the 1960s. So some of Elvis's style is due to Alan. And Alan had just revealed to us that he had recently gotten married just before Elvis made him foreman of this ranch. And so being able to stay back near Memphis, was a boon to his new marriage. And he was also struggling with his own addiction to pills. So he's revealing a window into what's happening around 1967 within Elvis's inner circle. They have been taking pills for a little while, and some of them are starting to break down from them, having different various issues, like Alan, who Elvis, what Alan's trying to tell us is that Elvis was helping him by allowing him to stay home with his wife and overcome his personal issues, and then he was going to be welcomed back out on the road. And you could see this because Alan was one of the gentlemen on stage with Elvis in 1968 during the comeback. He's wearing one of the maroon suits. So Alan was a very important person to Elvis. Hi, Angie. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. But now we're going to move on to some happier memories. But again, everyone should bear in mind that what we're doing right now is we're getting like our first glance of the ranch. And we're going to go in deeper. We've probably already gotten in deeper through the last episode than you've seen in other material about the ranch. But this is just scratching the surface because, like with everything about Elvis, there's layers and layers and layers to it. So those of you that have been following me through the contract series, it's been kind of simple so far because Elvis hasn't really been involved in the contracts yet. We're looking at things like library cards and stuff that his parents signed. So there's only like 1 or 2 layers to look at there because Elvis himself hasn't really started to be active within the archive. When those of you that are following me through the mystery of August 16th, 1977, what we're looking at there are really the effects of Elvis's life. Because again, Elvis is gone from that story. And so we're just seeing his effects surfacing out of the archive to tell us things as we move through. Here on the ranch, Elvis is very much alive. He's very vibrant. And he was surrounded by concentric circles of friends and family. And a lot of them are here. And it makes a very dense story. And you can't possibly tell it all at once. So that's why we're going to move through this once to really get a good view. And then we'll come back and we'll be layering in more stories. And so where we're at right now is Elvis is still hiring his crew. And he hires his uncle, Earl Pritchett, head groundskeeper at Graceland. So Earl's already working for him. But he wants Earl to come on over and live at the ranch and, do the groundskeeping and maintenance kind of stuff on the ranch. A trusted man to help Alan. As Alan said, he doesn't know anything about raising cattle or really keeping things running, like equipment and stuff. Earl is a master at keeping equipment running. Earl is Elvis's uncle through marriage. He's married to Vernon's sister, Nash Vall, who they call Nash Presley. And so she's really Nash Pritchett now. And they have their daughter, who we know as Donna Presley. She would have probably been known as Donna Pritchett at the time. She was 17 years old. And so Earl, Nash, and Donna all move out to Circle G. And that's where Donna lives until Circle G basically shuts down. And what Donna says is, when I was 17, well, before I start on that, I think I have a picture for us to look at. Let me take a look here. So these are some of the pictures that we looked at yesterday. This is the Circle G, just so everybody can get another familiarity with it. And that little house is the cottage. And that's where Elvis and Priscilla will end up spending their honeymoon night. We're about to get to that part of the story. And here's the check. This is the document. That's why this is in the contract series. Elvis signed this check. $5,000. This is earnest money, his promise to buy the property at the agreed upon price, which was over $400,000 at the time. And you can see he's dated that February 9th, 1967. And there's another date stamped on it, February 14th, 1967. So we can see it took a few days for it to cash through the bank. That's my guess as to what that stamp is. That's the bank saying money's been moved over to, or cashed out to Jack Adams. That's who the check is made out to. And you can see Elvis's address at the top of the check, 3764 Highway 51. South Memphis, Tennessee. So this is before it was Elvis Presley Boulevard. This was check number 2703. Which you have to wonder about that a little bit. It seems to me like by this point, Elvis would have written a lot more than 2,700 checks. So I don't know what his numbering system was, or how many different bank accounts he might have moved through over time. Like maybe they gave him different numbers and stuff to avoid fraud or something. I mean, I have no idea. But 2703 seems like a number out of one of our checkbooks, so it seems low. But that's the check. And we have a picture here of Elvis and another gentleman, and they're on the farm, on the ranch. It's a cattle ranch, and that's the cattle barn. And that's where they keep all the cattle at night, and they come out during the day to graze and feed. And Angie's saying interesting info. Thank you so much, Angie. Appreciate that. Here's the bridge that's on the property. Used to be a lot of controversy over how this bridge got to be there, but you go and watch some of the Spa Guys videos, Jack Adams' son makes it clear that Jack Adams built this bridge, along with the cross. He's really the one that kind of turned this into something that looked like a golf course, which is what attracted Elvis and Priscilla and Alan to the property in the first place. And then this is a picture of one of the trucks Elvis bought first day. This is actually one of those 3 trucks that he drove over from buying the property, and they needed pickup trucks to be able to run this ranch. That's the way Elvis saw it. They needed them right then. Now, this is a solid beast of a truck. You can see that it's all steel construction back then. These are not fiberglass panels. And it's survived all this time. Obviously, it's been restored at some point in time. But you can see what kind of a solid work truck this would have been when Elvis originally bought it. Just get another view of it here a little bit. Wouldn't have been any frills inside that cab either. They didn't build the trucks that way back then. And here's a work truck that's seen a little more action. This is a 4-door work truck, even though you can't see the rear of the truck in this picture, but you can see that Elvis is driving it. So he liked to drive these pickup trucks. He liked to get behind the wheels of these things and take them for a spin. Angie's saying that last one's a nice truck. Yeah, I'd like to have a truck like that today. Who knew you just wouldn't be able to get trucks like that anymore? Terry's saying it looks like a very solid truck. Yep. No little pieces falling off that. And this is a picture of Alan Fortis and Elvis. This is very much what they would have looked like around the time of the Circle G. I think they might have been slightly younger here, maybe a year or two before. Now this, I believe, and I can't swear to it, I don't know for sure. So if anybody does, I would really love to know. But I think this is Earl Pritchett. Of all the pictures that I could find, this is the only one that seemed to identify that this was Earl Pritchett. And I found a photograph where he's much, much older. And I think that the face is the same. But, I mean, it's got to be like a 30 or 40-year difference. So I think this is Earl Pritchett. If anybody can confirm that, I'd really like to know. But you do see that he's got an E and a P on his shirt. So Earl Pritchett, it makes sense. I'm just kidding. The E and the P is for Elvis Presley. You can see that he's standing at the music gates outside the guard shack. And that E and P means he's working for Elvis. So this is an interesting look at, I'm assuming everybody at the time that worked for Elvis wore these shirts, like the gate guards and all the maintenance guys, who Earl would have been one of those. And so he would have worn this EP shirt. And this is probably like 1965, 1964, something like that. Could possibly have been even earlier. So if anybody knows who this is or when this picture was taken, that would be great. Leave it in the comments, leave it in the chat. And if you're enjoying the show and you like the channel, make sure you leave some comments and you chat and you tell people that you love Elvis to come on over and check out the channel, see some of these amazing videos and information that we're letting out. And make sure you mash that like button. You got to mash it like the king, which was a music video I released a couple of days ago. So if you didn't get to see it, make sure you watch Mash It Like the King and go ahead and mash that like button, just like the king. But I think this is Earl. And let me tell you what Donna has to say about Circle G. Donna Presley says, when I was 17, he bought the Circle G ranch in Mississippi. My dad started to work for him. He oversaw the properties, both Graceland and the Circle G. We moved on to the Circle G when I was 17. We moved in right at the end of February, the 1st of March. There was this huge snowstorm in the middle of March, and it was, I don't know how many inches, but it was not normal. Elvis was pulling people around, all the guys and their wives that worked for him. He had a tractor with a boat connected to the back of it. He was pulling everyone around. Just things like that. Just natural, fun things with your family and friends. So Donna has a wonderful story there with a great image of Elvis driving this tractor, which he probably wouldn't have driven a lot of tractors before, so he was probably having a ball. And they connected a boat to the back of it, which I'm assuming is like a rowboat. Probably something that does not have a motor attached to it. And they got people in it and they're pulling it over the snow. So this is a fairly ridiculous picture. They're lucky nobody got hurt, I'm sure. But that is a city country band's sleigh ride, I guess, where they tried to put it together out of what they had. But it does sound like it would have been a lot of fun. And Marion's asking if I could ask Donna about the picture. She must know. Yeah, I might send it to her and see if she'll respond to me about it. That would be fun. Or if not, maybe she has a picture that she could send us so that we could see what her dad looks like. But if that's not her dad, then we have an unknown Elvis Presley guy that I would like to know who he is too. Now, the deed for the Circle G Ranch, which identified Elvis as the owner, was filed on February 22nd, 1967. 4 days later, on Sunday, February 26th, 1967, Elvis was at a low point in his personal estimation of his own career. He was scheduled to depart the Circle G this week, bound for Hollywood, to begin production on the film Clambake. Elvis's spirits were low. His participation the prior week in the Nashville recording sessions for Clambake was lackluster. At this moment, Elvis was unhappy with Hollywood, Colonel Parker, film scripts, movie songs, and most importantly, his own participation in his career decisions and promotion. Just like many of us, at this moment in his life, Elvis felt trapped, knowing he had the power inside himself to manifest his dreams, just as he had proven so many times before. But at this moment, he was not willing to take the necessary risks. He was unsure of the correct next steps. He was doubting himself. Even the king doubts himself from time to time. And this was one of those moments. But we can see why. We know that his beloved Uncle Pat passed away the previous month. So again, he's had mortality has come right into his face again, which has happened many times in his life. And this is just the latest, but it does tend to get him down a little bit. And then he's got these other external pressures that are floating around, and he's about to go do this movie Clam Bake. And I think we can all agree Clam Bake, although I think it was kind of a fun movie, wasn't the greatest artistic piece of his career. And in the middle of his own career, I'm sure it felt like a major letdown to be going to make this movie, especially when you could be hanging out on your own ranch. And then Terry saying, if anyone should know, it will be Donna. Well, yeah, of course she'll know for sure. So that's a good idea. Hopefully she'd be nice enough to let me know. But I do know that she's been under attack for the past week or so from, other Elvis related stuff on YouTube and other places. So, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this video, is that she's gone out and said that she's personally disappointed with where the Circle G's at right now. So hopefully this will bring a little awareness to Circle G into the history that's there, and maybe give some people some ideas, and they'll be able to go out there and, I think that's one of the problems with the property, is if you don't understand the full history, then what would you do with this property in order to make it attractive to Elvis guests, right? Like, sure, it's fun to go out and look at a big field, but once you've come and you've looked at the field, that's basically it. What do you do? So just like at the Elvis birthplace, it's been developed into a nice park. So there are some other things there to tell you about Elvis's life, and there's a path to walk, and, a pond that you can sit at and reflect at, and there's some benches and things like that. Out here at the Circle G, it's just undeveloped property. So one of the decisions you'd have to make is which pieces would you develop, and what stories would you tell to make that development worth it. So hopefully maybe we see some here. But he's getting ready to go off to Clam Bake. But he just feels like, Elvis feels he needs a few more days of escape with his family and friends on his new ranch, a blissful paradise of horse riding, long walks, and good food. He just wants to relax and forget about all these other problems. Recenter himself. I'm sure that we've all felt like that at different times. Especially in the middle of our careers. Especially what we may feel is a slight downturn. It's kind of nice just to pull back and escape for a little bit. And Donna Presley said, Elvis loved being out on the ranch, riding horses. They had the beautiful lake with the bridge and the gorgeous cross. It was so serene, so real. It was something he just loved to do. Being out there and just being with family and friends, having barbecues and things like that. We had great times. So he just did normal family things out there, and that's what Donna really remembers, is those normal family moments. So I don't know if any of you ever had family get-togethers like that. Probably had a table set out, a bunch of homemade food on it, chairs gathered around, folding chairs. Probably a few blankets thrown out on the lawn. Some people would have been riding horses because they were available. People would have just been walking around, and others would have been sitting in the chairs, just chewing the fat, talking away the day. That's what Elvis was looking to do, and just spend some more time like that. And when Elvis was out there on the ranch, he often wore a rust snap front suede jacket with 2 snap button front pockets, which he later gifted to his close friend, Alan Fortis. So this piece that we see on screen right now, this was Elvis's shirt, that jacket, that rust snap front suede jacket. And Alan kept it all those years. And I don't know what Alan eventually did with this. I'm assuming he sold it to a collector. But Alan passed away in 1991. And this piece sold at auction in 2021 for $1,700. So I don't know if it moved around through other hands or was kept by perhaps one of Alan's descendants. I don't know. But in 2021, somebody else bought it for about $1,700. And this was a jacket that Elvis wore while he was very happy. Unused to long hours in the saddle, over the last few days, Elvis had ridden so much, he developed saddle sores. So that's how much Elvis wants to stay on this ranch, as he spends every minute trying to ride one of these, his rising sun, most likely. But he rode and rode and rode, and he ends up with these saddle sores. So in need of medical aid to obtain relief, Barbara Little, who was out there at the ranch because she's the girlfriend of George Klein, and George Klein's out there at the ranch, playing cowboy and having fun with Elvis. And so Barbara is a nurse, and she offers to contact her boss, Dr. George Nikopoulos. So Barbara contacts Dr. Nick, and Dr. Nick arrives, and he brings relief to Elvis with medication. He's got something that he's able to prescribe to Elvis that helps the saddle sores. It's like a salve or something. And, he listens to Elvis, which is a big thing for Elvis. He likes people that listen to him. Elvis tells him about his personal issues and that he just needs some more time off from work. Just can't go back and do this clam bake movie right now. It's just, he just doesn't have it in him. And Dr. Nick is very sympathetic. And he provides a written opinion that time off both work and travel are medically required. He's not just advising that Elvis not work or travel. He's requiring it. And that's what Elvis needs, is that written authorization, that medical document that he then gives to Colonel Parker. And Colonel Parker is then able to give it to the studios. And it, through paperwork, demonstrates that this delay in making this movie, which is going to cost some money, somebody's on the line for this money, that's the studios. They're not going to be happy about this. They have some wiggle room, but there's not a lot. But this demonstrates to them that this is outside of Elvis's control. He can't show up. He medically cannot show up to film this movie, according to this document from Dr. Nicopolis. So this is a huge favor that Dr. Nick does for Elvis. And I'm not saying that Dr. Nick made anything up. I believe Elvis needed this time off from work medically. I believe that by this point in his life, he was already developing some of the problems that 10 years later will eventually end his life. We could be fairly certain that his megacolon started roughly 2 years before this, probably in 1965. Surely by 1966. But if not by 1966, then this year, 1967. It would take, the medical estimate is right now, that to develop a megacolon the size that Elvis had, it would take between 10 and 12 years. So that's where I'm getting those numbers from. So there's probably other medical issues that are plaguing him right now, and as well as just the stress. He's overbooked himself, and he's gotten himself into projects that he's not very happy with. And he's got some personal stuff going on. So once all three of those are combined, his stress levels are very high. And so I don't think Dr. Nick made anything up when he said Elvis had to have this time off of work. But Dr. Nick is the one that said it. So that is a big favor to Elvis, because that's what Elvis wanted and what he needed at that moment. Now, Colonel Parker was not happy with that. He wasn't happy with that at all. But I think even Colonel Parker paused for a moment when he saw that there was a doctor involved. He didn't really know Dr. Nick at this point. And I'm not sure how that would have affected his opinion one way or the other if he had known Dr. Nick. But Dr. Nick's definitely a doctor, and he's giving this written opinion that something's wrong with Elvis. So even though Colonel's not happy, he had to also be very scared at that moment. What if something really was wrong with Elvis? Something seriously wrong. We're just missing a few days of work right now. But what if this becomes permanent? I'm sure all of that was playing a part when Dr. Nick handed over this written opinion. And this did not just affect Elvis. This affected a whole lot of people. And it was generated right here on the ranch. And Marion's saying that this is a nice jacket. Yeah, I agree. It is a very nice jacket. And it's really in great condition. And Marion's also saying that Elvis did 3 pictures a year. That was a big amount. It's sad they worked him that much. Yeah, I agree that it was a massive amount of work to do 3. But he certainly had a choice in doing that many. And in those early years, I don't think it was a big deal for him to push himself to do 3, because if we looked at the workload he was under in 1954, that last half, 1955, 1956, 1957, it was immense. It was an immense workload. So immense that when he was in the Army, it was like being on vacation for him, really. And I think he came out of that kind of refreshed. And then through the first few years of the movie making, I think it was very fun and refreshing for him in many ways. But by this point, it's now become very tiresome. And the dreams of better movies is not materializing. Now, some of that was him too. He wanted the money that came from, he wanted the lifestyle. He didn't care about money, but he wanted everything to continue as it was and to continue to get better. And that required more and more and more money. He had to keep up with inflation too, right? So he needed that massive payroll, that massive incoming of money in order for his outgoing of money, which wasn't the things that he bought. People put a lot of emphasis on the things that he bought. That's just a drop in the bucket compared to the money he had to spend just on his payroll and upkeep and maintenance of the stuff that he already had and the people that he was employing. So there was a lot that we don't see. We just see the very tips of the iceberg about the financial issues that were on Elvis's shoulders. And at this point in 1967, they're weighing heavily on him. And it's part of what's making him want to be on this ranch. And part of the reason he's having such a good time there, because he's truly insulated himself. Not just he's distanced himself or isolated himself geographically. These problems physically can't make them to him anymore. And I think that's part of what the fun of the ranch is too. Kind of the same as when people go camping today and they leave their cell phones at home and they say they're going off grid. This was Elvis going off grid. He did not want all these other intrusions to bother him. And as we can see from this segment, he's already been to Nashville to cut music for this movie. And he's so disappointed with the music that the thought of filming the movie is just getting him down. And Terry's saying that movies today take maybe 6 months to a year compared to the movies Elvis did. Oh yeah, his movies were definitely quickies. They were not. They weren't art by any means. They were commercials. They were very commercialized. If it had been the 1980s, I think it would have been a kid's Saturday morning or afternoon cartoon connected to a toy line, right? That's almost how commercial his movies were. They just didn't happen to actually be commercials for anything other than Elvis's albums. But if toy lines had been a big thing at the time, like they were in the 80s, I'm sure that Colonel Parker would have managed to strike up a deal into one. They had a lot of different weird kinds of merchandise. But a lot of the merchandise they did was really in the late 50s. And I don't think they did as much of that throughout the 60s. And even when they came back in the 70s, they didn't have nearly as much merchandise as they used to for Elvis. But getting back to Dr. Nick, this is how Dr. Nick becomes a lifelong friend of Elvis Presley. And Elvis asks Dr. Nick, while you're headed back into Memphis, you have to drive right past Graceland. Can you stop and check on my grandma, Minnie Mae? She has not been feeling well lately. And Grandma Minnie Mae was the kind of person that she didn't go to the hospital. She wasn't going to go to a doctor. She thought that once you're sick enough to go into the hospital, you weren't going to come back out. So there's no point in going to the hospital. That means you give up. That was the end of you. So she was going to stay in her bed until the end if she could physically make it happen. So Dr. Nick stopped by. He was able to help her. I believe he prescribed something for her. I think he saw Delta at the same time. But he quickly began treating all of the Presley family, basically. He became Elvis's trusted doctor. So we're going to explore more of that in a future episode, but we are going to look right now at probably the oddest connected memory to this, because it's from Alan Fortis, who we're also talking about during this walk through the ranch. And Alan Fortis remembers Elvis meeting Dr. Nick a different way. So the way that I just related is the standard Dr. Nick meets Elvis story. And I think it's in all the other books, including Dr. Nick's. I'm not positive. That's part of what we're going to explore during this series. Because I've only brought in, a couple of viewpoints into this walkthrough. But Alan's is radically different. That's why I wanted to go ahead and bring it up. Alan Fortas says that in the early months of 1966, Elvis was home in Memphis. So this was the year before Circle G. Circle G's 1967. Alan's saying early months of 1966, which would be January through March, maybe April 1966, the previous year. Elvis was home in Memphis when he caught a bad cold. Man, this is really getting me down, he drawled to George Klein one day. George said he'd see what he could do, and he telephoned his girlfriend, Barbara Little, who worked for a local doctor's partnership called the Medical Group. Barbara asked one of the physicians, Dr. George Nicopolis, if he would mind making a house call to the most famous resident of Memphis. I had been a patient of Dr. Nick's for some time before Barbara ever steered him to Graceland. He was a grand guy. You could talk to him, and he'd take the time to BS with you. Better yet, you didn't have to wait long when you went to see him. And a lot of times, I'd just call him and describe my symptoms, and he'd send a prescription out to me. I may have taken advantage of my relationship with Dr. Nick to get pills sometimes, but I truly believed that he was a good doctor. It didn't surprise me then that Elvis also took a liking to Dr. Nick. After that first meeting, he considered Dr. Nick his personal physician. So I find this an interesting story because it means, if true, that Dr. Nick and Elvis met a year prior to when most people think they met. Alan seems to have had a relationship with Dr. Nick from previous to that too, so it seems odd that it took Barbara Little, who worked for Dr. Nick, to bring Dr. Nick to Elvis through George, her boyfriend George Klein, Elvis's friend from high school, the president of his high school class, his high school graduating class. So how did Dr. Nick meet Elvis? Now, one thing we've got to remember is that when Alan told these stories, I'm fairly certain it was 1990. And he passed away the next year. And I don't know, if he was sick or had an illness. I really don't know what happened to Alan. And I don't know how his memory was faring in the end there. But I think what we can take from this for sure is that Alan knew Dr. Nick before Dr. Nick enters the Elvis story. And that Dr. Nick becomes very important to Elvis at Circle G. But it's possible they had some kind of relationship prior, even if it was just that they had met one time. Although Alan's saying Elvis considered Dr. Nick his personal physician from that point in 1966. So other people that saw Elvis on the ranch around this period were the Jordanaires. And they said they'd never seen him so exuberant. Ray Walker of the Jordanaires remembered that Elvis was more exuberant than Ray had ever seen him in his life. And the Jordanaires had known Elvis in the late 50s when he was very energetic. Ray said that after spending some time at the ranch, Elvis let his hair return to its natural blonde. And Ray said, quote, "He looked like $1 million. Then 4 days after their May 1st, 1967 wedding, Elvis and Priscilla spent most of their honeymoon in the small cottage on the Circle G Ranch. And Donna Presley had a story about that cottage. And what Donna said was, one particular time, it meant so much to my dad. Elvis found out that my dad's favorite song was From a Jack to a King. He and Priscilla were staying in the little cottage there. My dad had relieved one of the guards so that he could go to lunch. My dad was standing out there at the guardhouse, which was right next to the cottage. Elvis opened up the window and sat down at the piano and played and sang From a Jack to a King, just for my dad. Elvis did little things like that. It was just so touching and so kind and so loving, and because not everybody gets that sort of thing, it was amazing. Amazing man. He always cared about what we were doing. He always wanted to know who I was dating and what I planned to do with my life. So I thought that was a wonderful little story from Donna about just a small thing that Elvis did for her dad, sang him a special song just because he knew he was outside, just outside the window, and Elvis felt like singing. And it's nice to know that Elvis had a piano right there in the cottage so that he could sing, just sit down and play and sing anytime that he wanted to. But Elvis soon decided that the cottage, though cozy, was much too small. He had fallen in love with the 8 trailer homes that he purchased and spread over the grounds to house his friends, families, and employees. Unlike most places Elvis had lived, including Graceland, the trailer homes were brand new, with the most up-to-date appliances and newest home technology. Elvis loved modern conveniences and gadgets of all kinds. And so these new trailer homes, they were magic. They had all of these latest stuff, everything that he wanted, and they didn't have any of the problems of an old place like Graceland or even like the hotels that he stayed in. This was brand new, he was the only one that ever used any of this stuff. And that never really happened for him before. So Elvis, he purchased a 60-foot, 2-bedroom mobile home manufactured by Delta. And that's not his Aunt Delta. It's a manufacturer of mobile homes named Delta for himself and Priscilla. And he was ecstatic with this home. But the demands of his career forced him away from the ranch. Now, eventually, we're going to get to the end of the story. Doesn't look like it's going to be in today's episode. But at the end, that the house, the trailer home that he's bought, will move to Graceland. And that's the trailer that Donna and her family live in when they move from Circle G to Graceland. And so that's the home that Donna lives in while she lives at Graceland. And that home was last seen by the public when it was sold at auction in 2018 for $55,000. So it's still out there somewhere. You can still find it if you know who's bought it. And here we can see a picture of Elvis, and I believe this was during that giant snowstorm that Donna was talking about. I could be wrong. It could be at Christmas later that year, like November, Christmas kind of time, but because of the amount of snow and the unusualness of it that was dropped in March, I kind of think that's what he's dressed for. And Marion saying that Donna's story melts my heart. Yeah, it's a really good story, isn't it, Donna? Or Marion? And Terry saying, great video about Circle G Ranch. Thank you, Terry. And Marion saying, Elvis always cared about other people's feelings. There are so many stories. That's true. There are a lot of stories about it, and that was one of them that I wanted to highlight. And this is the last picture that I'm going to bring up for today. And it's the trailer. This is the trailer that he bought from Delta. You can see that it's got red shutters. He loved that color red. But he got these red shutters on the white trailer. And you can see the little picket fence. I don't know where this is at when this picture is taken. I'd like to think it's Circle G and maybe they had that picket fence there. But perhaps it was at Graceland and they had the picket fence. That's something else I should probably ask Donna, huh? But it's a pretty neat picture. And so today I am again going to end with another song. This is another new song, different from the one I played at the beginning. But I'm going to go ahead and say to each and every one of you that until I see you again, you all keep on taking care of business.
In the hush of a Vegas night, he called a close, no stage, no line. Slipped a ring on both her hands, no crowd to cheer, no wedding band, just love, just breath, just time grown old, a vow unspoken, sealed in gold. Two hearts caught in 24K, in peace, in quiet display. No diamonds loud, no eagles cry, just tenderness that doesn't lie. Worn near her skin, where stories hold a whisper of him, sealed in gold. My love, to give, but something whole, the myth, the memory, sealed in gold. No velvet throne, no final show, just gravel roads where true love goes. He gave her life, he gave her soul, and left behind a heart to hold. He loved my life, he wrote it in chain, a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give something old, the myth and memory, sealed in gold, sealed in gold, sealed in gold.